someone here that we could each probably name that we thought should have been bigger than they were. Mm-hmm. Is there anyone that you thought, you've been around obviously a long enough time, that you thought didn't get a fair enough shake or could have?
It's hard. It's hard to say because a lot of it's up to you.
Yeah.
You can't just sit back and wait for I got to wait for my push. When am I going to get my push? I remember Lex Luger one time in WCW when Hogan was working the main events. I remember Luger coming in and going, "Oh, man, I feel bad for you guys. Like, I'm still waiting for my chance to get the top push, and you guys got to wait for me." And I'm like, what are you talking about? You've been on top for the last 10 freaking years, man. But because he wasn't in the main event, he still wasn't happy with the push. So, at risk.
But he had a kick at the can, right? Like he did main event.
He did.
But there's probably guys that you could think that didn't ever get that shot, or maybe never got out of something developmental. Or not.
I think a guy like Santino mentioned Evan Bourne. That's why I'm thinking of him. Like, we worked together about 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember saying to Vince, if you want me to work with him, are you going to do something with him? Mm-hmm. Yes, because I will put him over and I'll make him a star. But are you going to do something with him? Yes. We went out there and had these great matches and tore the damn house down. And a month later, he's losing to Funaki on Sunday Night Heat. Mm-hmm. So there's guys. Kofi Kingston, the night he put, and you were there, he put big pop for Kofi Kingston. The night Kofi Kingston put Randy Orton through the table at Madison Square Garden, he was a superstar. Mm-hmm. He was there. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, they pulled back on it. Same thing happened with me in 2000. I wasn't doing anything. I beat Triple H for the title at State College, and then had to give it back 15 minutes later. Yeah. But had they not made me give it back and I would have been the champion, that could have been, who knows? You could have went straight because people bought that huge. Mm-hmm. And I always say that I was the George Harrison of the Attitude Era. And what I mean by that is that George Harrison is one of the greatest musicians of all time. Great songwriter, great guitar player, super charismatic. His only problem is he was in a band with the two greatest musicians, songwriters, rock stars of all time in John Lennon and Paul McCartney. I came into the WWE as a very popular babyface and worked my way up the ladder very quickly. Mm-hmm. My only problem was I was in a company that had Steve Austin and The Rock as the top babyfaces. Now, there's nothing that George can do to beat Paul and John. There's nothing Jericho can do to beat Rock and Steve, except for turn heel, which I did, and that's when I got to the next level as a heel. But to be the actual man in the WWE, had those guys not been there, I could have got it. Mm-hmm. You never know. It could have been me. But those other two guys, we were so lucky with that generation to have not just one once-in-a-lifetime, super over iconic character. We had two in the company at the same time. That will never happen again. Never, 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 never.
Well, so you honestly think that was the end of that wrestling era? Like there will never be another moment where it'll be...
I just think because wrestling became so cool at that time.
Yeah.
The Monday Night Wars and all this stuff. And Steve was so different. And then Rock was so different. And they were both so different from each other that you could put them together. You could make them work with each other. They could do two completely separate programs. And also, too, in that time frame, you had 10 or 15 guys that were all at the top of their game that had experience, character, charisma, knew exactly who they were, confidence, input into what they were doing. I mean, think of the names, man. Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Triple H, Mick Foley, Steve Austin, Rock, Jericho, Angle, Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian. That's just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's 10 more you can name. And that was all in the same company at the same time. Mm-hmm. That won't happen again because the business has shrunk now. Now it's WWE. There's the Performance Center. There's a couple guys in Japan and Mexico, but this training ground is basically gone. Mm-hmm. Guys will never have another 9 years to get to the WWE. Like it took me 9 years. It took Benoit 10 years and Eddie 10 years, whatever. But those guys were already the best. That type of vibe might not happen anymore is what I mean.